Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for listening to our content, and please like and subscribe. Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I'm Jeff Francoeur along with Britt and Brad, and we are having a little round table today, men. But before we get going, I just it's nice to be home after the playoffs finally. I did not see the Diamondbacks Phillies getting 7 games, and yet there we were, and it was an incredible series. I mean, to see the Diamondbacks fight back like that, I was shocked. It ended up being a heck of an NLCS.
Yeah, so far so good on World Series too.
Yeah, been good games, and
yeah, it's for, even though we wish our team was in the World Series, this is a good matchup. It's a very entertaining matchup.
So what are you hearing? What do you think is going to happen? Anything with playoff format in the
I don't think
year?
anything's changing, man. I just think, look, they're not going to take away teams.
Yeah.
You got too much money, to be made now. I think the biggest, if there was anything, I think that they got to find a way to get that off day between game 1 and 2. It switches every year. So next year it'd be the American League has that off day, but it allows those wild card teams to set their pitching. Yeah. So I don't know what that looks like, but you got to find a way to try to take that away.
Because there's almost no advantage to be in the 1 seed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's like anything. I heard Snit say it. I heard Dave Roberts say it. They both said, look, we'd rather have that series best of 3 off any day of the week because you never know what can happen in a best of 3. But I also think that, look, here it is again, the World Series, when you have a 6 seed and a 5 seed.
Yeah.
But the games have been really, really good.
Been great.
I mean, so, it would be tough to change the format because it's been incredibly entertaining.
And, both championship series go 7 games.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Can't
you're
do better
MLB,
than
you're
that.
getting everything you want.
Yeah.
And I would think this World Series, you're going to see at least, hit up into 6, 7 games probably, depending. But, I think you're seeing the ability for baseball, whether they like it or not, to have competitive series.
So, guys, as baseball wraps up, I mean, we're in football now.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to talk about the biggest thing in football going on right now, right?
I know where you're
Taylor
I know where you're
Swift
going,
and
man.
Travis Kelce. Biggest thing in football.
It's amazing what she's done for the NFL. I mean, it was a floundering brand that was really just struggling, and I know they really appreciate kind of the exposure that she's brought to them and really elevated them. I think they were kind of right below the NHL, but now they're really, really.
You just hurt hockey fans everywhere.
Yeah, why did you have to bring in a?
Well, I mean, maybe the next thing is she's always going to date somebody, so maybe she can date an NHL player next and help that brand.
I think Andy Reid said it best. If he keeps catching 140 yards with a pass, she can come to every single game for all he cares.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I got nothing else.
Gosh, college football. My Clemson Tigers are hurting a little bit right now, but they'll be back. They'll be back.
Old Dabo got a fire lit under him last night.
He did. I loved it. I loved it. It was great. He went off on Tyler from Spartanburg. Pretty good. But, look, Georgia's looking strong still. I think it goes to show you their advantage up front with the offense and defensive line just takes over all these teams. And that's why I still say they're going to be so tough to beat.
Well, they hadn't looked consistently that good until this week. They played Florida, and
I think they've been bored
really
at times,
good
man.
start to finish, man.
I think there's 2 teams that have a chance to beat them, and I think it's Michigan and I think Oregon. Just because Dan Lanning
he
knows them, and they have some explosive
Yeah.
people offensively too, but I just think it's going to be so tough for 4 quarters to beat Georgia.
Yeah.
They're going to have to me, they're going to have to self-destruct.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Alabama's trending to play him in the championship game, right? Is that he would play them in the
Yeah, well, we'll see. You know what? LSU, Alabama, the winner of that game will represent the
Yeah, that's a big game because Bama looked good for really the first time.
Yep.
I mean, looked a
That
little bit
second
like
half,
Bama.
That
Yeah.
second half, they came out and
Yeah.
and then LSU. Look, LSU lost what? Yeah, a pretty close one to FSU. That game got out of hand in the fourth quarter, but it
Yeah.
was a good game. And then they lost what to Ole Miss and by 3. So it's always fun. This is a fun
It's a
time.
good
of year.
time of year. Yeah.
You get your Thanksgiving, your Tuesday, Wednesday night Mac action starting, baby. That's the one my wife can't stand now. She's like, we used to at least get Tuesday and Wednesday night off, and she'll be like, now you're watching Bowling Green and Akron at 9:00.
Hey, man, it's a little chill in the air. The leaves are turning. Thanksgiving's around the corner.
Basketball starting.
It's a great time of year. Great time of year.
Going on.
So what do you got for us, Brad? I mean, Britt. Looking that way, doing
I know
this.
we look very similar.
Well, we've got really an interesting topic today, and we've called this episode "Achieving Your Goals." And as in the past couple of months, we've talked a lot about one side of the coin, which is we've talked a lot about making sure that sports are fun, making sure that you're balanced and your kids balanced, and that they're restorative. But we've gotten comments on some of our posts and stuff of how about how hard you have to work to achieve something. And Pure Athlete is not just about having fun. We're about helping kids and families achieve the goals that they want to achieve in sports, as well as doing it the right way. And so we wanted to devote a whole episode today, and I think it's a great time to do it, to talking about how do you set those goals, when do you set those goals, and what does it take to achieve big things. We've got somebody on set here who has achieved some big things. We've got some dads who are kind of almost finished with the journey with their kids, who had kids that wanted to achieve some big things. So, I think it's a great time to talk about this topic.
I love it too because we agree. Like our main focus is we want to give the best experience to these kids, have fun, and I think we've done some great things. But to think about it, all the athletes we've had on here for the most part at some time have gone all in.
Yep.
Right. Have decided this is what I want to do, and they put it. And so I think it's fair to sit here and say there will come a point for a lot of these parents with their kids that maybe, they have a chance to play at that next level and do it. So what's the right way to do it? What's, the proper way where you're still having fun, but you're still, because I think, and one thing we'll get to is as you get to that level, you're going to have to push your kids.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, that they need to be pushed.
Yep.
There's no doubt in my mind kids need a push, but what's the right way to do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's, and every listener, every parent listening will probably remember not the specific moment, but there's a time when, as a parent, that your kid shows that they may be pretty good at a sport or sports, and 2, more importantly, they show that they're interested in sports. And that's kind of like the start of the journey. You're kind of, as a parent, going, oh, I love that my kid is passionate. My kid looks like they have some ability. My kid's dreaming now about, playing professional baseball or being the quarterback in college. And so it really starts then, and how do you do that the right way? But you don't want to ever squash like their dreams.
Yep.
You don't want to sit there and go, 97% of the kids are not going to make it to college. That's when they're 8 years old or 10 years old or whatever that point is. You want it, it's fun. The ride is fun at that point, and you just got to make sure the ride continues to be fun. But there's also, and that's what we're going to talk about today is just like how do you stay engaged, stay involved, keep them on the right track, but not burn them out.
Well, we talk about our 5 pillars a lot, and the first pillar is called vision. And vision really is about, you're at the beginning of the journey. Where are you envisioning the journey taking you? And so I think a good place for us to start today is talking about when do you start setting goals, and what does that look like? How young is too young for a kid? And of course, some sports are different than others.
Yeah.
But
I think goals and dreams are different.
Yeah,
you have a lot of 8-year-olds. I want to play in the NFL. Of course, don't we all?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so I think realistic goals. When is it okay for kids to set that? And I think for me too, a lot depends on the kid.
Yeah.
The maturity of them. I mean, I've told you this now. I got a 10-year-old daughter, and I think she actually understands goals. We've talked about things she wants to accomplish. I'm not so sure my son in 2 years will under comprehend what goals are compared to what she does.
Yeah.
So I think everybody's different. And then how I think as parents, I don't think it's bad for your kids to set goals. But I think as parents, we have to do a good job of making sure those goals are realistic for our kids to reach.
Yeah.
Not a 12-year-old kid, I want to bench 320. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
For sure.
I'm just saying, I don't think that's going to happen. But, I think the younger you set the goals, I think it should be more work ethic, not so much, I always say this, and like you see people, I want to hit these numbers. I want to hit 100 RBIs. I want to hit this and that. And again, I think those are things, and we've talked about this before, that, are, instead of talking about that, talk about the expectation. I want to hit, if you're playing softball or baseball, I want to hit 2 balls hard every game, because you can control that. You can't control where the ball goes after that, no different than in golf. I want to, have less than 32 putts today, but that can all change. If your iron game's missing greens and then you have a good short game and you're chipping them to this far, you get 1 putt. So I think as parents, it's our job to help our kids have realistic goals.
Well, you're hitting on a good topic too. And, when we talk about goals, there's kind of the big goals, and then you break them down into, shorter term, more manageable goals. But I think for starters, and again, it's different on when you do this, but if you look at, there's 45 million or so kids playing youth sports age 8 to 18 in the country today, depending on what study you look at. And probably half of those kids, the goal is simply to have fun.
Yep.
And they want to play recreational sports, and you as parents and your kid, y'all may decide that's your goal, and that's a great goal, and play sports as long as I can, as long as I'm having fun. There's another group of people that say, and Brad, you see this as an AD, just making a high school team in some areas of the country is a pretty big goal. Yeah. And you have to do a lot of stuff to get to a point of making your high school team. And then, of course, some kids have a goal of, and it may be a dream at some point that turns into a more realistic goal, but of playing in college, and then some people playing beyond college.
Well, so going back to your original question, what age do you think, and I know it probably depends on the maturity of the kid, but what age do you think is a good age to start saying, hey, let's start talking about kind of what your goals are. And then like Jeff said, let's categorize kind of some of those goals. So
I think for me, 8th and 9th grade.
You think that late, really?
I do. For major goals, like maybe I want to play in college.
Yeah.
Or maybe like, this and that. I mean, I'm fine in 5th, 6th grade. I want to make the high school team. And again, it all depends where you live too. Where we are here in the metro Atlanta area, a lot of guys and girls, man, it's tough to make your high school team.
Yeah. There's
a lot of competition. There's a lot of great. So I got no problem with that. But like, I think in like 6th grade, I still find it tough to like, okay, what do we got to do to get you a scholarship?
Yeah.
I think
haven't gone through puberty.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I think really then I think like Britt, you may have said this, but the goals that before that age, before you start talking specifics, the goal is going to be, and again, it's going to be based on your kid. It's going to be about effort.
Yeah.
It's going to be about like working hard, being a great teammate. And like I had 2 different my boys were very different personalities, but sometimes it's about pulling them back a little bit. And one of my boys was just super intense, and my concern with him was like, hey, are you enjoying this?
Yeah. Because
you're going. I love it that you're going all out. I love that you're giving 100%. But I'm looking on your face, and it's like you're playing in the Super Bowl, and you're playing 8U baseball. Is this gonna? I want you to have more fun. But so like I think it could be. They can have goals, but they're not going to be like goals like, and again, I think once they hit puberty is kind of when you start talking specifics. Maybe.
Yeah, well, and I think 8th, 9th grade, you start looking at it like, I remember I sat down with my dad, I think at some point, or driving in a car as I was an 8th grader going into 9th grade that summer. And, I kept coming back to my goals where I wanted to make the high school football team and play as a sophomore. And I wanted to start, or make the team varsity as a freshman with baseball. I kept playing basketball into my freshman year, and then I quit after my freshman year because I think my dad helped remind me as time started to get constrained. My dad wanted me to have time to do other things too, friends, enjoy yourself. The basketball probably wasn't going to fit in the picture for me at that point. Yeah. And so how do we make these 2 goals, which was football and baseball, more realistic. And that was as we got through ninth grade, and it was like, you know what, it's time to give up basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you just said is important. That there's kind of a goal that's out there that you're working towards, maybe when you're younger, that gets you ready to be an all in goal or not when you're a little older. I'm with my kids. They had a goal of, hey, I'd love to play college tennis, and this was in middle school. But we weren't all in middle school. Now we were doing the things to prepare to maybe be all in 2-3 years down the road if they continued to progress and they continued to want it. But I think, for parents of kids that are, younger or in middle school that, seem to be gifted, you may want to be doing the right things to develop fundamentals and develop a foundation and all those kinds of things. But being all in at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, I don't know about that most of the time.
I think all in doesn't mean, you can pull it back a little bit, and we both saw this, and you're about to see this. It does kind of become a reality a little bit right when they get to middle school.
Yeah.
Take away travel teams and club teams, but middle school is really the first time they start trying out for a team. And I just remember my 1 year as a middle school athletic director, which will remain, will go down in infamy, I guess. The parents were the ones that were the biggest struggle because they all wanted their teams. They all wanted their kids to make the team.
Yep.
And so it was always a discussion like, what is the purpose of this team in middle school? And great, it's still middle school, and it's not supposed to be super serious. But at the same time, you had some kids that had worked really, really hard to make that team. And you had some kids that had played video games all year, but still had the expectations they should have made that team
And play.
and then get to play. And so you had to have these conversations with the parents, like, look, this isn't about winning the Super Bowl, but at the same time, it's not the same thing. You've got a kid who really, really is taking this seriously, and you got a kid who's not taking it seriously. So what is fair in that instance? And I felt like the parents had to understand that their kids really didn't deserve. It's one thing if the kid would work their tail off, but just wasn't that talented, but had a great attitude. Those kids could be on the team, and they had a right to be on the team. But there's a lot of kids that just didn't put any work at all until the tryouts came, and then were upset that they didn't make the team.
I remember our first year was 8th grade. Middle school basketball in Gwinnett County was the only time you really tried out for a team until you got to high school. And, it's funny, we talk about being athletic, doing that. Like 3 of our starting 5, we were all just great athletes. And so we started on the basketball team, but then I fast forward to 2 years down the road, 2 of us quit. We did, football, baseball. One of the other guys did football and track. And it was like a couple of those guys that got cut from the 8th grade basketball team ended up starting their junior year in basketball. And I love it that they kept going.
Kept after.
And that's why I said there's nothing wrong with it. I always say this, especially now because there are middle school teams now more in 6th, 7th, 8th grade. There's nothing wrong with getting cut from a team, man.
Yep.
It's good for them sometimes, right? I mean, it's going to teach them, I got to get back. If I really care, I got to get back, and I got to work harder, and I got to get better. And if you just give up, then it's probably not your sport anyways, or you weren't passionate about it enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where parents have to, that's where parents come in. If you got a child that's been cut early on, really look and see, does that child still really, really love the sport? Does that child want to continue in that sport? And then use it as motivation. I know it seems like your world's coming to an end, but this is the start of the journey. And there's a lot of great athletes who got cut early on in life.
There are. And I think this is where we talk about the parenting goals. When do parents kind of set goals for their kid? I think it coincides because it's like you walk that journey with your kid and, okay, what is your goal? And now it's the parent's job. I think when a kid gets cut, when he or she's not getting playing time, they're not getting what they want. Okay, well, these were your goals. You're not getting to your goals yet, but that's where parents, I think, can have the goals of, okay, so we got to start working more. We got to start shooting 100 free throws. We got to start doing this stuff and hold your kids accountable and push them to be able to reach their goals. And that's where I think parents, more than setting goals for their kids, need to walk alongside their kids' goals and figure out how they can help their kids achieve them.
And I also think that I with my kids, I asked them to go write down their goals.
Same. Yeah.
I would look at them and we talk about it, but I wanted them to own the goals. You know, I wasn't going to sit down and go, hey, let's talk about your goals and here's what I think you should do. I would ask them, hey, go, spend some time thinking about it, get out a notebook, and you write your own goals. And you have to own those are your goals. And then, like you said, then you kind of use those as a way to teach them along the way. Like, well, you're the one who set these goals. These are your goals, not my goals for you. And so, then you can kind of watch and see how you're tracking on it.
Well, the other piece of that as a parent is, and I see this get mixed up a lot, but your sports goals for your kid that they come up with and you help them, but those are a subset of your parenting goals. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have parenting goals for your kids and you're focused only on sports goals, man, you're missing the boat.
Yeah.
And sports can be we talk about this all the time. Sports can be such a great teacher in helping your kids become the right kind of people they are. But you've got to get alignment between the sports goals fall up under the parenting goals, not the other way around.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think the goal is just to try to, we as parents, we all believe this, is to try to give your very best in everything you do. And sports is just one of those things. We tell our kids at the high school is just, even if you don't want to play in college, develop these great habits in high school that can take you to your first job or take you into college. Whether those habits are working hard, being a great teammate, encouraging others, taking school seriously, you can create those great habits that'll stay with you after sports are over with. So that's a great point, Britt.
So let me ask you guys this: when your kids and you're gonna wrestle with this over the next few years, but when your kids are teenagers. And if they're really going for a big time sports goal and you're right in there with them, how do you know when you're, as a parent, becoming out of balance and you're focused too much on sports goals? I don't know, Brad, I'll speak to this from my perspective in a minute, but have you dealt with that, or maybe you never got out of balance?
I think, you're always out of balance. I think it always seems like that's just parenting.
Yeah.
I can speak as an athletic director more as a parent.
Yeah,
if
sure.
That's okay.
Yeah, go.
I think, we talk about as an athletic director, I talk to parents a lot of times and kids about standards and there's a standard that you have to get to make the high school team. There's a standard you have to get to make all region or maybe to win the state championship. Those standards are there and they're already set. And you can complain that they're not fair, they're not healthy, or whatever it is. But we chose to compete in GHSA or Georgia High School Athletics. And or you, as a kid, you chose to say you want to play, varsity soccer or whatever. So there's a standard for making that team. A lot of times the rub comes as a parent or as an AD or as a coach where you see that kid says, okay, I want to be all region or I want to make this team, but they're not working hard enough. And so there has to be an awareness on the part there has to be an awareness on the part of the athlete, but there also has to be an awareness from the parent standpoint of what that standard is and how hard they need to work to get there. And then the kid has to own that. And you have to let the kid, all you can keep reminding him is, okay, this is a standard. The standard is you probably have to shoot 100 free throws, every day to make the team or to, if you want to, run the mile in this to make the varsity cross country team, that's a standard. And you have to kind of guide them along the way and they have to own that.
Yeah.
But really, that's what I always remind them is like, the standard's not going away.
Yeah.
We can complain about it, but that's what you got to shoot for.
I remember my dad told me it was my demeanor that changed. Mm-hmm. When he realized he needed to pull back and do it. And with football, my dad was always watch me play football, but my dad didn't know a lot about football. My dad grew up playing soccer, baseball, and hockey. Mm-hmm. So with baseball, he always had a grasp on what was going on. So junior, senior in high school with football, man, he would always sit at the 10-yard line. I told you, away from the other parents, watch me play, thumbs up, have fun. I never felt any pressure playing football. Baseball, going into my senior year, my dad always sat down the right field line. Senior year, all of a sudden, 60, 70 scouts every game. First 7, 8 games, he sat right behind home plate. I think he, like anything, wanted to hear what the scouts had to say, wanted to know. And I stunk. I mean, I was bad. And I remember coming back around home plate one time and he yelled, keep your back elbow up, and it was like, I looked at him like, and he'd never done it. And we got home, man, me and him went at it. My mom was crying, this and that. And I remember the next game, he sat down the right field line and I hit 2 home runs. I think I've told this story. And it was like, after that, But my dad said I could tell because you'd always played with such just like joy and
Freedom.
free and just doing whatever. And he's like, I could tell by your face, you were just feeling it. You were pressing, you were doing this. And so that was his big thing. And so I think that's what, like, I think to my kids sometimes now, even at 10, 8, my two oldest, as I'm coaching, I'm like, I can tell when they're relaxed and they're able to have fun. And I can tell when they can't get out of their own way, because whether it's me, other coaches, other people telling them too much, they got to be able to play loose and they got to be able to play free. And if they can't, you're not going to realize the potential. So I think that's the biggest thing is you got to watch your kid's demeanor. You know, your kid's demeanor better than anybody else. If you can see them pressing, if you can see them really grinding it, you know, there might need to be that talk or intervention where you pull back. Cause you know, I love it, Britt, and you wrote here, like, we talk about the goals of the parents and the goals of the athletes, but how do you achieve that? Grit, work ethic. I mean, nothing else. I tell people, God blessed me with a lot of talent, but I still worked my tail off to get where I wanted to go. But so how do you protect your kid from doing too much?
Well, can I ask you a question though?
Yeah.
Is grit something that is teachable, or is grit something you're born with?
I think you're definitely born with it. I do think that you can teach someone to get in the grind. I really think you can. Now, maybe going into your senior year, if you've never had it, probably not going to have it. But I also think middle school athletes and stuff like that, as you get cut from the team, you can develop some hardness, man. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, I think being able to do that, but you know, that's one of the pillars that we talk about is grit. And I always put grit a lot too with work ethic, just because I think that's getting down in the weeds. That's realizing some things that, you know, but again, I think it's the parents' responsibility to help know when a kid is going too far and when they need to, you know, get a break, go to the beach for a week during the summer or get away from it. I don't think it's, you know, disregarding their dreams, but it's also, you know what? If, you know, I love it with Julie Foudy when she was talking to us about her daughter. Like, if you want to go to a homecoming dance, and you're going to miss one soccer game, you're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think that's a great job of parenting.
Yeah, Brad, your question about are you born with it, or I mean, I definitely think, you know, that some kids are born with it. I mean, there's no question. You hear stories about kids that their parents couldn't pull them out of the gym, or they couldn't pull them off the tennis court or the golf course or whatever. And for achieving something big, you know, that's a nice advantage to have if you're born with it. But I do think you can develop it. And, you know, I've talked on this show before about a book called Grit that was written by a doctor named Angela Duckworth. It's a great book. And it's not just about sports, it's just about grit in life. And she kind of chronicles a bunch of research and a bunch of studies and talks about how you can develop grit. But it's a challenge. And if you're, as a parent, having to develop grit in your kid, then, I mean, that's where you really got to manage that tension, because a lot of conflict can come out of that if you push too hard and trying to, especially if you're a parent who has grit and you grew up, you know, working your butt off, and that just comes natural to you, and your kid doesn't, because maybe they don't have a passion for it to start with, but it can be tough.
Yeah, I think so. Cause like my mom and dad always told me from when I was 5 years old, man, I wanted to go hard. I played everything with where, as my sister, like, you go back an 8th grade basketball team, she was really good, but she didn't have that toughness yet, this thing. And you go to her senior year of high school, and she went on and played, you know, 4 years of college ball. She developed that. I mean, she was not the same in 8th grade as she was. She had this instinct her senior year, you know, and I think developed that. So I definitely think you can develop it.
What do you think, and I have my answer, but I'll ask you two guys, as a parent watching a kid play a sport, what do you think the number one thing that frustrates a parent watching their kid play? Like, when you hear parents getting on to their kids, what do you think the number one thing in their minds is that drives them crazy the most, of where they will say something which they shouldn't at a ball game or at a practice or something like that?
You know, For me, honestly, the only time I ever get on my kids right now they're 10 and 8, and I got 2 more getting ready to come, but is effort. It's the only time I'll ever get on my kids if I don't see the effort. Because at the end of the day, it's like I told my son a couple of Saturdays ago, lacrosse game, like 1 hour is all you're asked on a Saturday. You can run, you can hustle. I'm all asking for 1 hour. It's like a 10 a.m. game. I'm like at 11, the rest of the day you can do whatever the heck you want. But run, hustle. And that's the only thing I'll get on, because to me, when you don't run, when you don't hustle, and we see it in pro sports, it just looks bad. It looks like there's no fight. Looks like you don't care. You can take a beat down when your team's trying, when those girls or boys are out there hustling and giving everything they got, and they get beat, in a soccer game 6-0. I live with it, because I'm like, I can live with it. They tried. They were out there. They were focused. They just weren't as good yet. That's my big frustration, is when you see a give up or you see someone not try.
Yeah. I would say the same on game day. From personal experience, I mean, I didn't ever deal with my kids not making effort on game day. I mean, they were full bore when the game was on or the match or whatever. It was during the week when I didn't feel like the effort was there. And this isn't something other parents saw. This was just something in our household that I would churn inside and be frustrated and be like, I'm doing all this, I'm paying for all this, I'm committed to all this, and you're not living up to your end of the bargain. And that's where I struggled. And I think, I'm sure plenty of parents can relate to that. And that's that whole thing of, grit. You can define grit a bunch of different ways, but grit is, there's a toughness side of grit that you've talked about. And there's also this, I want to be in the gym, until you drag me out of the gym stuff. And, that we talk about, in fact, I think it's a good thing to talk about the 10,000 hour rule, because it's kind of, everybody's heard of it. It's kind of a myth, but everybody has this idea that, or Malcolm Gladwell came out with this idea that if you put 10,000 hours into anything, you can become great at it.
And that's a lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
My
But a
golf
lot of
game's
people
still
buy
not
in.
where it is today, and I've put in well over 10,000 hours.
I think you can become good at it.
Yeah.
But you're not going to become.
Doesn't mean you're going to be a pro.
Right.
Like, any of it, like you can, even
And
if you're
then
not
again, we talk about it, to add to that, what kind of work are you doing in those 10,000 hours?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's my biggest thing all the time. Like softball, man, we practice only about an hour and 15, hour and a half, and we go hard, we do it. And there's why you see some teams practice from 2 to 6. I'm like, do you need to practice 4 hours?
Yeah.
Like what do you accomplish out of that? I would rather be,
Purposeful.
Absolutely. And so I think that's the other thing too, is you can teach your kids, hey, there's a good way to work efficiently, work hard, get your reps in, but we're not here all day either.
It's gonna, you're right about the grit. When I think of grit, I think of someone who's overcome an injury, someone who's overcome being cut, someone who just keeps on fighting. The spending 10,000 hours in the gym or whatever. If it's the kid, that's just the kid who's just born with like a drive,
Right.
or a work ethic, whatever the.
And there's very few of those.
Yeah,
that have that
and so
ability.
it is. Britt said this before, but the 10,000 hour thing has really not been a good thing, I think, for parents, because they kind of said, oh, well, my kid can do that, then they can be the next Tiger Woods or whatever. But it's just not. It's just so rare. That
Well, you read the stories like of Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
At 10 years old, I'm doing 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 pull-ups and 1,000 sit-ups every night.
That's not his dad pushing him to do that.
No,
That's
he's
how he
just
was
got
wired.
it. He's got that motor, and that's just
again,
rare.
Exactly. That's one out of every.
But I think as parents, a lot of times we hear those stories and we're like,
Why can't our kid be doing that?
why aren't you doing that?
Yeah. It's like the private lessons. You want to talk about 10,000 hours? Like, just say agility work. My kid went in and did agility work from 4 to 5. Well, did you watch your kid? Like, did he work?
Yeah.
Just because he went there for an hour, like that's what I do a hitting lesson once a week with my daughter from 4 to 4:30 on Thursdays, and I go in there. I don't talk, I don't see, but I want to make sure that she's focused, she's putting in the effort, because to me that's important. Where if you just drop your kid off, come back 30 minutes later, how do you know they even got anything out of it?
Yeah.
Do you know the person that's coaching your kid?
Yeah.
Are they qualified to do that? You know, if I go back to speaking of Dabo when we were talking on it, remember I love when we asked him, what is your advice to coaches? Know what you're talking about. And that's so true. Do you know who your kid's getting these lessons from? Do you know their credentials? Do you know what they believe? Do you know their philosophy? Because they might be teaching your kid to do something totally different than the way that you want it done, or the way that you think your kid needs to be doing it. So I think that's the whole hours thing too. How much work is good work, credible work?
Yeah, what does practice look like? And this whole context of this is, how do you achieve your goals? And you know, if you have young kids, you know, you're going to learn this as they go along. There's practice, and then there's purpose-driven practice. There's deliberate practice, where I love when you hear athletes talk about, you know, I go into practice like I want to improve one thing. There's one thing I want to improve every time I go into practice. And I don't just walk in and say, oh, I'm going to hit today, or I'm going to do this today. No, I'm going to work on X today. And every time I practice, I want to get better at this, whatever that is.
And I also think it's the parents making themselves available to help the kid.
Yeah.
I think about, you know, Braden with lacrosse. I feel like he's gotten so much better, and me and him have gone in the backyard for 15, 20 minutes, 4 or 5 nights a week, and just throw the lacrosse ball.
Yeah.
We run back and forth doing that. And I'm like, that's 10 times better than me taking him to somebody with a group of 7 other people and him getting a lesson for an hour, and he might get a fourth of the balls thrown at him.
Right.
You also, I mean, gosh, we've all been there, but you see the kids that don't want to be there, you know, and we talk about awareness. You know, I've been to so many lessons, and you see these kids that just kind of get dragged in there, or these kids that drive up because their parents pay for the lesson. As a parent, you have to be aware too if your kid's just not buying into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I told my kids, like, look, it's great. You know, I'll pay for you to do lessons, whatever they may be, whether it's strength and conditioning, or whether it's speed and agility, or hitting, or whatever. But that's just once a week. You know, it's really up to you the rest of the week to take what they told you to work on and work on it yourself.
Well,
And I've had, you know, my older son, you know, really good soccer player when he was younger, and you know, he would work hard in practice, and he'd do well in games, but I just saw him at home that he wasn't playing soccer when he didn't have to. And I had to be aware as a parent, hey, you know what? I think he's got different goals than maybe I see. Gosh, he's got so much potential. He's so fast, but he didn't love it, and it was just something that he did for fun. And as a parent, I had to pull back at that point and say, hey, that's all good. You know, I want you to be passionate about something. If you're not passionate about soccer, I want you to find something in life that you're passionate about. But a lot of times, it's not just. I mean, the kid, again, going back to owning it, the kid, you can take them to the lessons, and they had to be a good coach. But the kid really has to be the one who takes what they do in those lessons and keep working at it. And it's really, and if they come and ask you to go more, like, that's what's awesome as a parent, is when your kid says, hey, can we go out there and throw, or can we go out there and can I run routes for you in football or whatever? That's awesome. But it's a lot of times it's just like we hear the stories, those kids that are throwing that tennis ball against the wall for hour upon hour by themselves. And that's where you sit there and go, okay, well, I think that kid maybe, you know, he or she seems to really kind of really love doing this. They love the work. And
I think
you encourage that.
And I think as your kids get older, like, that's the biggest thing that I've noticed is, like, I started pushing Emma Kate at 9 years old last year. We're going to the cage. I'm throwing to you. We're going to hit. She never said no. She never asked me, but she never said no. And we kept doing it. But I also knew she loved softball. She loves playing 4 or 5 games on a Saturday and stuff. And now it's so funny. I think she's seen her ability to improve because of us work. Now she'll come home, hey, can we go throw the ball in the backyard? Or can we go to the cage? Because I think they're seeing the result. So that's where I think as parents, we talk about it, you got to know your kid. And like you said, if they're like, this stinks, you know, it might not. But if you realize that your kid really enjoys doing it and they have fun when they're doing it, then I think that's where we come alongside and show them there's a way to get better, a healthy way.
Do you think there's a point though? What is there a tipping point though where that it gets to, it goes from, and then also kind of trying to let them understand that it goes from being fun, it goes from being exciting, to where it becomes more like a job, and you know when they get to college, it's going to be more like a job. But is there a point you can avoid them from getting to that point earlier, or is there just a realization that they have to see that it's going to become more serious?
I think there's just seasons. I mean, number one, if your kid's one of these lucky ones that, you know, just has success from the very beginning and they have success all the way through, well, that's motivating. I mean, anytime any of us are doing something that we're great at and we're doing nothing but getting affirmation on, we want to lean into that more. But most kids are going to go through times and periods in sports when the success isn't coming and they're struggling. And that's when it becomes tough because it's natural to want to back off. I was talking to one of my kids about their tennis career, and, you know, and he said, gosh, you know, when things were going great, man, I play a tournament all weekend. And on Monday, if you wanted me to take time off, I was like, no, I want to get out there. But if I had a terrible tournament, it's like, I want to take some time off. You know, I want to get away from it. So, I mean, those are realities that we have to manage and be attuned to as parents. And when are they not working hard because they need a little bit of a break?
Because,
and things are going tough, and you got to put on your sports psychologist hat and deal with that versus, you know, when is it becoming perpetual that they're not working.
They're not working
enough,
because they're getting their
and you got to talk with them about, hey, in life,
Yeah.
you say you want to achieve this goal. To do that, you have to put in the work. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine, maybe, but you know, you're not going to achieve something without working hard at it.
Yeah, I think there's a grace period for a lot of that stuff, depending, like you said. Sometimes, you know what, you're going to get a beat down.
Yeah.
And you need a day or two away, man. You just do. In any sport and anything, man, I've got tons of NFL friends that have told me before that, you know, sometimes, you know, you always go watch film on Monday and Tuesday's the off day, and they've said there's been a time or two during the season where maybe they just got crushed on Sunday. And the coach was like, you know what, we'll see y'all Wednesday morning. Take a few days, come ready to work. Because you can just see, like, these guys, they don't want to come in tomorrow. And it's not a lack of caring. It's not, you just need some time away. But like you said, I think when it starts to happen more and more and more, you know, like I said, the first time Braden said, I don't really want to go to baseball practice. I'm like, get in the car, let's go. And then it kept happening more. Whereas, again, I told you with lacrosse right now for him, he's got his stuff out ready to go to practice. And like, as a parent, you know me, man, I love baseball. I mean, that's what I played, but I'm like, this is his deal. And I would much rather go watch lacrosse practice. I know nothing about it. I'm learning. I mean, I am grinding, watching videos, but I'd much rather go watch my son love it and run around than sit there and coach a baseball practice where I know he could give two rips about being out there.
It goes in levels. I mean, it goes in terms of the commitment required. Also, it's a little less fun, but they have to make that decision. It really should be all about fun. And that's when you should really stress vacations. You should be stressing downtime. But when they do hit high school, there's a requirement that they have to commit to. And I remember telling my younger son and telling my family even, and I have a big family. Okay, you know, he's starting freshman year this year. You know, there's going to be a lot less, you know, time for stuff at Christmas or spring break. Definitely no spring break in baseball. You don't have that, you know? And so we'd have to understand for the next 4 years, you know, as a family, and also your kid has to understand that you've made, if you decide to play varsity sports in high school, you made a commitment. Now you want the coach to give them downtime here and there and stuff like that. But that's a 4-year time. And so they really, there's kind of a step up in terms of, okay, it's not like it kind of as fun as it was in Little League or middle school because it's a little more serious, but also can be more fun in other ways. And then there's a place, I think, when they're a junior where they make that decision, even if they have the ability, they kind of start talking to kids who play in college, and they realize, wow, that's even more of a job. And we see a lot of kids at high school kind of sit there at that point, make the decision, you know, I think I'm going to finish just in high school because I want to have a different kind of college experience. And so it kind of goes in levels of that kid has to be aware of, it's going to get more and more serious. It's going to get more and more like a business. And as a parent, or as an athletic director, as a coach, I have to understand that because that's just reality.
Yeah, and I think it's make sure your kids, and again, I think this is important, no matter if it's second grade T-ball or your senior year of playing football, to keep asking your kids, are y'all having fun? Are you enjoying what you're doing? Because I go back to my senior high school football compared to second grade football, and I know I had the same amount of fun. I knew the stakes were higher. I knew there was more pressure. There was this. But once I got between those lines, it was the same amount of fun that I had in second grade. And I think that's important. You know, I know you with tennis, you think about it from watching your kid play in fourth grade to senior year, where maybe you're playing a tournament where there's a lot of scouts there and stuff. Yes, you know the stakes are raised, but you want to make sure your kid is still having that great time playing it then that he is when he's in fourth grade.
And in society, or the culture, a lot of times is going to try to work against that.
Yeah, and that's where you as parents have to push back.
Yep.
And I don't care what culture says.
Yeah, you triggered a thought, and we could do a whole episode on this, so we won't dig in deep, but I've got a chapter in my book about quitting. When is it ever okay to quit? And I just want to say to parents out there, we talk about kids go through times when things are tough, and especially when they're younger. Don't panic if your kid, finishes a game or a tournament and has a bad experience, and they get in the car and say, I'm done. I want to quit. And, that's not the time for, we don't raise quitters and all that kind of stuff.
Let them vent.
Yeah, let them vent. And I mean, I had that experience multitude of times with one of my kids early on, and, 24 hours would go by and he'd be like, look, I'm ready to go to practice. But for 24 hours, he was all in on, I'm done.
Yeah.
And you just kind of have to learn your kid.
No, it is. And that's where I think you can talk about the final topic of today is talking about burnout, I think. So your kids in 8th, 9th grade, they tell you, I want to go all in. I want to do this. So how do we as parents and coaches too, because a lot of parents are coaching their kids, how do you avoid the burnout? How do you push kids, but also know that I don't want them in a year saying this stinks and I'm done. And now it's their sophomore year of high school and they're not doing anything.
Well, I mean, for starters, I think you as a parent have to realize that, you're in a marathon, not a sprint. And your kid's not going to become a college player at 8 years old. They've got, the next 10 years to develop, and they also have 10 years to burn out. So you have to manage that tension of how much is too much. And we see the 30 on 30 stories, or we go to the movies about the Williams sisters or Tiger or whatever, whose parents decided at 3 years old that they were going to be stars. And it's easy to say, well, they did it like that and it worked for them and look at them now. But for every one of those, and there are not many of them, but for every one of those, there's a ton of burnout stories.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be one of those.
No, and I think that's a good thing you said too, because I think back to, when we had Chipper's episode, there was that one fan that wrote in about concentrating on baseball at 9, 10 years old. And he was like, well, Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
I think that was the example.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, so if your kid's Bryce Harper, go for it.
Go for it.
But you also think about it like with the Tiger Woods too. Like he was also crushing everybody in 10-year-old golf tournaments.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, but at least there were results to back it up. Like Bryce Harper was going to 12 years old playing in like 15-year-old tournaments and the best player there. And I'm not saying it's okay and that's what you should do, but at least you knew that kid and you're like, holy crap, that kid's special.
Yeah.
I'm sure you talk about tennis, like with Serena and Venus, they were 15 just hammering people.
Yeah.
But there's also, you can see that they're going to be really, really good, but we talk about, are they going to be the best version of themselves as a human being?
Right.
And I just going back to burnout, I really, if the coaches are good, I don't think a kid's going to burn out because of the work that's required of them, or the standards set by their coaches in terms of workouts and practices. I think burnout is going to come from a mental thing that is probably more related to the parent relationship, and I think that we have much more say, good and bad, in whether or not our kids burn out, and really in terms of, and I just know personally where my younger son started flourishing is when I basically said, I'm stepping back. And this is your journey, and you're owning it. And some other things happen along the way in terms of success, in terms of some other things that really also coupled with this. But man, when I really kind of said, dude, it's yours, that's when he started flourishing. And that may just be the way he's wired. But I just think that, if they're bought in, if they love the sport, if they understand the standard and they understand the requirements, I don't think they're going to burn out. I think the burnout happens when the parent gets too involved and wants to be that coach too, and it becomes about the parents' goals and the parents' dreams. And I just think that's where most burnouts happen.
I love that example because remember I've told you in this that I quit baseball when I was 12 years old all summer. And looking back now that you just said that, the whole reason I quit was not because it was too much baseball. It was because, there was daddy ball going on with the coaches and stuff around that I ended up quitting. It wasn't that I was playing too much baseball or practice. It was the circumstances around it. And so
where it hit me is when my kid would not be as interested in going to a practice or to a game, but then, and so I would sit there and go, well, that's interesting because when he would be with his buddies, he would play football, basketball, and baseball. He would love still playing the sports. Yeah. But it was the what was going on around sometimes those leagues, those coaches, or me, they were robbing the joy of it.
Yep.
Well, and I think burnout is not always the fault of the parent, but the parent, is the one who needs to, when you quit playing baseball for a summer, if a kid says I need a break and the parent says, nope, can't do that, we're going to miss our goals, then you're putting yourself in territory where burnout becomes a risk.
Well,
so you got to be attuned to your kid and what they want.
Yep.
And you should have conversations about if they want to have a break, every other week, then again, you saying your goal is this, you can't achieve that by, taking a month off every other month, but maybe that's not a realistic goal then.
Yeah, and I think that's where you tell too. For me at 12 years old, when I realized my dad cared about me way more than me playing baseball or whatever, we went and played golf. I told you all summer, and stuff like that. So it was my dad just wanted me to do something, whether it was whatever. And I think he knew my passion for baseball and that I'd be back. But I also think he knew at that point, we need to pull back, we need to step away.
Yeah, it's really smart.
And so it was great because he knew I wasn't going to quit.
Yeah,
that's not how I was made. So he made the choice for us. That's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, I think as parents, we get scared sometimes because it's our goal, not the kid's goal.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. And I think this was a great topic. We've talked, like I said, a lot about different things over all these things, but I think this was important because there is going to come an age for a lot of parents out here where your kid needs to be pushed. They need to develop. They need to practice. They need to work on their craft if they want to get to that next level. But I think there's a certain age to do it, and I think there's a certain way to do it. So we appreciate all feedback. After you don't watch this, you got questions, you got, comments that you want to say on whether you agree, disagree, different things. We would love to hear them. It gives us great stuff to talk about. And look forward to getting back next week with a couple more good guests we got coming up and getting ready for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So just like that, there we are. Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for checking out Pure Athlete, and subscribe to our channel on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you go to listen to our podcast.